Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Friday night. You know what that means. Time to talk more Star Wars. We got some more information on the Obi Wan series. Looks like now we have a character with a lightsaber. Let's talk about it.
You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. So now, first of all, I have to say this. I really didn't clue in on the fact that Kang, who we all know from the Fast and Furious franchise, he basically plays the character of Han, oddly enough. I had no
Right.
idea that he was even in this whole thing. Like, I didn't even know he was going to be in the Obi Wan series. But then he goes a little bit further and he reveals that he's actually going to be brandishing a lightsaber. So his character, he was talking about it a little bit, and it almost sounded like he was just basically saying it kind of like just off the cuff. Like it wasn't an announcement. He was just, yeah, and then I finally got to hold a lightsaber or something, and we'll go through the article a little bit today. But I don't know. What do you think about all this before we really get into this discussion?
Well, I think we did know that he was going to be on this series because I think we brought it up on one of our previous shows.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought that I wasn't sure it was 100% announced at that time, though. I mean, I might be off a little bit because I remember there was a period of time where there seemed to be a lot of rumors going around about who was going to be in it. And then, of course, there was that big cast announcement. And we may have discussed it then, but it was like, I don't know. I just didn't really focus so much on him. Like, I knew he was going to be in it, but now it almost sounds like he's going to be a main character of some sort.
Yeah, because we kind of pegged him, we were kind of talking about that he might be one of the Inquisitors. That was one of the things that we talked about.
That is true.
And
we did say that.
And I think that's where the lightsaber comes into play, because I think he might actually be, one of Vader's Inquisitors, which would be really, really cool and really, really interesting, especially, in the article where he's named a couple of things, but I know you said we'll get to that in a moment, so I'm not going to steal your shine on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's just basically going to go over, I mean, obviously, because there's a couple of different articles about this thing too, and a few of them will have slightly different, I guess, takes on it or whatever, but I don't know, I just think that it's really interesting. And, here we see that he has a physicality. I will say that. As far as him playing an Inquisitor, I can hang with that because he totally has the physicality to do it. He has the acting chops to pull it off. I mean, I don't know if anybody's going to necessarily call him, one of the greatest actors of our time, but
no.
I mean, I think he's cool, and honestly, I was really happy that he came back to the Fast and Furious series because, they killed off his character in 3 or something, or so we thought.
Tokyo Drift. Well, yeah, Tokyo Drift. Yeah,
that would be the third one, and it was I don't know. I think he was in flashback scenes or something like that, but the fact that he made a full-on return, I was really happy because he was actually always one of my favorite characters from the Fast and Furious series. So to see him now in Star Wars is just that's really cool to me.
Yeah, I mean, he's also one of my favorite characters. He's also in the Power franchise. He plays the attorney John Mock on the Power series. So if anybody's, fans of that particular franchise, that's also where, he's made a big name for himself. But I really think that he has a good look. I think he has a really he can have a very cool presence, and I've seen him be intimidating on Power. Not so much in the Fast and Furious scene. He's kind of more quiet, chilled, and laid back.
Did you see the latest one?
The latest what?
Fast and Furious, number 9.
Yeah. Yep.
I thought he was actually a little bit more intimidating in this one than he was in the first few.
Yeah, when he came in and to see him actually get his, because before he really wasn't doing a whole lot as far as action wise, but in that the last Fast and Furious, he did get his hands dirty a bit. And I thought that was really cool, especially to see him return. And so that's why I'm looking forward to seeing him, in this particular franchise.
Yeah, and again, I think that it's one of those things where if you start actually taking some of these, like when Ming-Na Wen was in this, and I'm not necessarily saying, okay, let's bring in a bunch of Asian actors in order to play martial artists or something, even though that kind of seems the
stereotype.
That's
right.
basically the stereotypical thing to do. But, there are other stereotypical things that they will bring in Asian people to do. And, like if you want to show like a wizened character or something like that, you just...
Yeah,
I don't know. There's
just
kind
really peaceful or
relaxed,
and
just kind of a vibe around that. I mean, if anything, yes, it's a stereotype, and it's probably not good in a way, but I mean, at least it's a positive stereotype. But I think what's cool about this is that they're bringing in people who not only have strong acting chops, not only have the good physicality, but if they do have to do any kind of a martial art type of a thing, it seems like they're bringing in people that are a little bit more legitimate in that, rather than just trying to teach these people who have no background in it whatsoever a few moves or whatever. And I think that actually kind of goes to, if you look at the lightsaber duels between the prequels and the original trilogy, one of the things that you could tell the difference, even though, again, and we will be doing a show at some point, maybe Monday, about the various duels and comparing them and maybe pitting them up against each other, kind of like a duel of the duels, really. But one of the things that I think that you can really notice is that in the original trilogy, those duels, they were basically, even though, yes, in universe, there's a lot of emotional content to them, and we did actually a show on this once where we kind of broke it down, where we said, there's definitely a reason. I mean, obviously, the real reason is, hey, it's the late 70s, it's the early 80s. The whole action wasn't really the focus. It was really more the characterization, and the duels were they were choreographed, and Mark Hamill had to train, and everybody had to train. David Prowse, of course, that's the reason why they wanted to get him, was because of his physicality. But I think that, by and large, that wasn't really the concentration, because obviously the Jedi had been kind of extinct for a while. Now, when you go to the prequels, on the other hand, it's a very different story. And then they had to actually bring in a stunt coordinator like Nick Gillard and really try to do this for real. But see, the problem I have, and this is what I think that they're starting to fix now, this is really the point, is that even then, as amazing of a job as they did, it wasn't like Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor actually had some prior, sword training or something like that.
Right.
So, I like this.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things too, when we're talking about if we're going to bring lightsabers into it, which I thought was really awesome, having Christopher Lee, right? Because although he couldn't physically move around like as fast, I like the fact that they tailored his style, that old regal fencing kind of style, to more hit. And that's where we know him from, more like your Errol Flynn, your Zorro kind of style, where, you got one hand behind it's like a swashbuckler kind of fencing versus all the swiping movements. And I love how they kind of use that to kind of make it, because that's what martial arts is. It kind of becomes, you can tell certain styles by certain movements. And I like the fact that they were able to differentiate between the two. And so that's what makes me really curious to see what style are they going to give, because to give Sung Kang, because if you really look at the sequel trilogy, since we're talking about lightsaber duels, right? You really didn't get, with Kylo, you can tell his stuff was more erratic. He didn't have much training with that. He was just kind of it was all driven out of anger, and he was just slashing. He was like a slasher, almost like a Jason Voorhees or something like that. He's just hacking away at people. Rey, by the time she actually, I guess kind of got a handle on a lightsaber. You kind of saw some cool stuff, in The Last Jedi, where they fought the guards. You saw a little choreography there, but they focus more on their connection more so than the lightsaber duel, if that makes sense. You saw more of the fact that they were able to kind of tee off on each other and knew where each other were at various moments and could feel each other. And that was kind of really the point of that battle, not really to showcase lightsaber skills.
Well,
so
no, you're absolutely right. In fact, one of the things that I found somewhat interesting about the sequel trilogy is what they decided to do was almost go back to that more characterization approach that they had in the original trilogy. Because, like you said, in the case of Kylo, let's say, because you did bring him up specifically, besides that whole erratic, he's somewhat unhinged, you also had more of a... It wasn't so much that the lightsaber... his combat style was somewhat like his personality, completely unglued, right? But it was also really more of an emphasis on the power. One of the things that I really thought was interesting about Kylo was they put an emphasis again on the power. Usually that kind of a thing happens as a Jedi or a Sith gets older. They start to rely a little bit less on their acrobatic fighting styles and their lightsaber, because that's basically what it is, right? When you're younger, you instantly go for the lightsaber and you jump into the fray, right? But as you get older, you're like, okay, number one, it takes a little bit more to do that, even though you can enhance yourself in the Force. But I think what happens is, with Kylo, it becomes more of it's really more of an emphasis on his Force powers, and it de-emphasizes a little bit the other. Now, let me just get to this thing, because Ronaldo and, Joanne are joining us again. Ronaldo says, Kylo Ren wasn't a good fighter, really, and Rey was worse, I think. And again, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree. On Kylo's side, though, I would say that it's more deliberate. I think they wrote that a little bit more deliberate because, again, Kylo's really trying to overwhelm. He's trying to overpower. He's not... It's not finesse. You have to remember that everything about Kylo is not about finesse. It's about just blunt, brutal, overwhelming force. And nothing characterizes that better than the ending of The Last Jedi, where he's just like, basically just wipes them all out,
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing, when you're looking at, and you're absolutely right, the co-characterization of their fighting styles, you see their personality into it. And that's one of the things I love really watching about, even all throughout the prequel trilogy, even through the original trilogy and in the sequel trilogy, that's one thing that's kind of remained consistent. Now, you're absolutely right. When you're younger, of course, like even myself, right? When I was younger, you want to do all the jump spin kicks and roundhouses, and you want to fly through the air like Bruce Lee all of a sudden. But as you get older, it's not the fact that you can't do those moves. I mean, sometimes you may not be able to just because of age. However, you do understand minimization of movement. It's like you can serve because you don't know how long this is going to go.
Absolutely.
So when you're young, you're more just trying to like almost kind of not necessarily always show off, although a lot of times that comes into play too. You're more arrogant in your fighting, and you're just trying to like show the world what you can do and be cool. However, when you get older, you're more like, okay,
it's economy of motion. That's basically what it is.
Exactly.
It's economy of motion.
Economy of motion.
When you're younger, it's like you said, there is a little bit of that show offness type of thing, but it's really more like, ooh, I have this cool new skill, and you want to utilize it all the time. That may not be the best thing for that fight, but you're still relying on that because it's a shiny new toy now that you have. You have this new ability, and you're just like, oh, I want to use it for everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of those things. It's like, and that's what was cool, honestly, when you look at the second duel between Obi Wan and Maul, right? Maul is still up to his old tricks and still trying to do all this. And Obi Wan is just really calm, at peace. He's focused. 2 moves, he's out of there.
Yeah, he dispatches them within seconds. And that just shows, Obi Wan. That's why it would be interesting almost to see the old Obi Wan at the time of Rebels. go against your Dooku's and stuff like that. Because, see, now I don't think he would be dispatched as easily.
No, definitely not.
He was much deadlier during that time period, I think.
Oh, yeah. But I think that's the thing. So that's why I'm so interested to see what they do with Sung Kang's character, because you're in that middle ground, right? Obi Wan is not as old, but he's not, as young either. He's not Phantom Menace, where he's flipping over Darth Maul's head and doing all that kind of stuff. So it's really going to be interesting to see how these Inquisitors, and then especially how they're trained under Vader.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, and that's the whole thing too, is because, see, as Anakin Skywalker, and with the Jedi holocrons, he's teaching students one way, because more of the Jedi stuff is more defense than attack. And even though Anakin was still more felt like sometimes a good attack is a good defense, that was kind of his philosophy, and that's why his forms were kind of different. However, when he crossed over to the Sith side, and now that's weird to say the Sith side, he crosses over to the Sith side, and now he's, and then he's in his suit now. So now how he uses, like you said, economy emotion, now how he uses his lightsaber is completely different. And we even read that in with the rise of Vader and, and things like that, how he had to alter a lot because he can't do a lot in that suit. So now he has to alter his fighting style. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does, how he teaches the Inquisitors how to battle Jedi, because he understands both sides now.
Right. And I think that one of the things that's kind of cool, first of all, I hope we actually do see that. Secondly, eventually he did make modifications to his suit in order to fight a little bit better, a little bit more free. But yeah, certainly he was, from the suit that he had right out of the gate with the Emperor, he was just pretty much
clunky.
Yeah, clunky. And it's like, so I think it's going to be really interesting. And obviously, being that this is going to be that sweet spot where Obi Wan he's still young enough that he could do some stuff, but he's old enough that he has more wisdom. He's got more, a little bit of, I guess, not just the economy of motion, but I think even when to fight, how to fight. Strength. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, of course, he's somewhat deadly now, which I think is interesting. So let's go into this article a little bit. So this is basically Sung Kang, which totally sounds like a Mortal Kombat thing to me every time I see it. I know, right? I just want to go Sung Kang, but it's probably terrible. We're gonna get so many negative comments, probably. But he's talking about how it feels to be joining the whole Star Wars cast and everything, and he basically reveals that his character has a lightsaber. And we're getting this basically from Screen Rant. They were one of the people, I think, that more or less broke this story, actually. But he's talking here how he reveals Obi-Wan has a lightsaber, and much like the MCU, the franchise has a good number of shows headed to Disney Plus. And even though the Book of Boba Fett is what's coming up next, it's Obi-Wan that's probably the most anticipated. And I would actually agree with that, because the Book of Boba Fett, we have some framing.